Morning, everyone.
Morning.
It's a bit intimidating standing up here in front of such an audience, but I'll do my best. So my presentation is dealing with online assessments and student tracking, and my colleague Caroline Keys and myself put the presentation together. Just for the record, Caroline is the pretty one. So this module that we assessed was in the Sport, Recreation, Exercise Science department. And just some information about the module. It's the SRE 217 module. It's exercise physiology. It's a second year level module. It's builds off from the first year module, so the students have got some background at the first level with the SRE 113 module. And then these students will go on next year into third year to do an advanced course in exercise physiology. So it's an intermediate course that's been presented in the second year level. So the assessments that we did online were the following. There were the class multiple choice questions, there were the weekly multiple choice questions, and then there were weekly tutorials. And these were made up of YouTube video viewing and review questions based on the videos. So with regard to the class MCQs, the structure was the students were given 2 tests per class, one before and one after class. They were given 2 classes per week. They had 10 questions per test. The questions were some true and false and MCQs. And the questions were scaffolded. So the level 1 questions were primarily conceptual. It's about 4 questions. Level 2 was the application and looking at relationships. And level 3 were the integrated questions, and those were about 2 questions. So the class MCQs, the pre-test were about 10 minutes. So the actual test started 5 minutes before class actually started, and the test ended 5 minutes into the class. So students had basically 5 minutes to do the test if they got to class on time. If they came earlier, they had more time. But they could do this in any case anyway, because they have internet access. And similarly with the post-test, also 10 minutes. So the test opened 5 minutes before the end of class, and the test closed 5 minutes after class. With regard to examples of some of the class MCQs, so at the conceptual level, the types of questions that we focused on was, for instance, you should do cardio exercises before strength training. Give an idea of, do they know the differences between cardio and strength training? So it's a true and false question. With regard to the application question, we asked them questions like, what target heart rate should you aim for while doing cardio exercises? And they had choices between twice your resting, 3 times your resting, 50 to 85% of maximum heart rate, or none of the above. And then with regard to the integrated questions, yeah, we gave them issues around if a subject has a resting heart rate of 60 beats a minute and a resting stroke volume of 100 milliliters per beat, then the subject's cardiac output would be equal to what? And we got a range of options there. So they had to do a bit of thinking and a bit of calculation as well in answering these integrated questions. So with regard to the weekly MCQs, very, very similar to the class MCQs. The structure was they were given only 1 set per week. They had 7 days in which to complete the weekly MCQs. They were given 3 attempts. They had unlimited time for each attempt. They were also given 10 questions per test, some true or false and some MCQs, and there were also several questions. So there were conceptual, application, and also integrated questions. So with regard to the conceptual ones, some of the questions were, for instance, heart rate is increased by the following impulses based on either cerebral cortex impulses, proprioceptive impulses, chemoreceptive impulses, or all of the above, and they had to make a choice. So they had to do some additional reading with regard to the weekly MCQs. Around the application questions, examples were if Kayla had a resting heart rate of 50 beats a minute and the maximum heart rate was 200 beats, then the heart rate reserve expressed as a percentage would be, and they're given various options. And just by the way, these abbreviations the students are familiar with, so some of you may be worried what does RHR and MHR mean. So they are given some background around these abbreviations. I've got a list of symbols, chemical symbols and so on. With regard to the integrated questions, Some examples were, if Tiffany, who is 50 kilograms, has a resting arteriovenous oxygen difference of 5 milliliters per deciliter and a cardiac output of 4 liters per minute, then what is her resting oxygen consumption? And they were given options as well. So a bit more thinking in order to work out the answers. With regard to the weekly, remember they had unlimited time and they had a whole week in which to complete this. Conceptual questions around the weekly tutorials. This is the third type of assessment, online assessment that we use. So at a conceptual level, what would we ask the students to do? We gave them a video to look at, so we gave them the link that they had to go into, and then we gave them various questions, essentially conceptual ones. For instance, name the valves of the heart and the functions of each. Name and explain 2 types of circuits of blood flow through the body. Distinguish between an action potential and a membrane potential, and describe the heart muscle cells resting membrane potential. So give them some background. And then with regard to application, we also once again gave the students a video to watch, and then we asked them questions, application questions. For example, explain the relationship between blood pressure and cardiac output, the factors affecting blood flow, and the factors affecting blood pressure. So a little bit more thinking on their part. And then with regard to the integrated questions, once again they had a video and then questions based on that, a bit more challenging. So for example, students had to explain some of the complications experienced by humans when exposed to microgravity, that is zero gravity or weightlessness, when traveling into outer space. Explain the term orthostatic intolerance, and for instance, the SA and AV nodes, what is the function around heart rate control. So one could see then that the students had a whole range of different challenges with regard to both class and weekly MCQs. When it came to student performance and tracking, so specifically looking at just the class MCQs, what was the students' performances like? So I just took an example of some of the marks that the students produced. So we've got the lectures. I just gave them a sample of some of the lectures, the first 7. If one looks at the class average marks, so these are the marks the students were getting on average for the lectures. So you can see it ranges from 4, 5, and 3 marks. So they weren't doing too well in the class MCQ set. It was out of a total of 10. What I found very, very disturbing was the number of students who were scoring 0 for these assessments. The first lecture, 22. Okay, it's the first lecture. They're still new to the program. They don't understand my style of teaching. And I was hoping that they're going to change. So it got a bit better the week. Second week went down to 13, then it went down to 11, and then they could start going up again. And very, very disappointing. With regard to the number of students who were scoring full marks for the assessments, once again, there were a few students, but it wasn't good enough. So towards the end, as I said, once we were into the term proper, fewer and fewer students were scoring full marks for these assessments. So it became a bit disturbing. The students weren't really getting maximum use out of these assessments. With regard to the weekly MCQs, I thought this may be a bit more promising because the students had more time and also a lot more attempts to do this. So with regard to the class averages, we saw that slightly better but not still good enough. They had a whole week to do these assessments and still very few of them were getting good marks. The average was around 6 and 5, which for me wasn't very, very heartwarming. Surprisingly enough, many of them were still getting 0s out of these assessments. So I was asking myself, what is going on here? You know, they whole week to do this, there were multiple attempts, and still many of them are getting 0 for this. So, very, very disturbing. Number of them were getting full marks for these assessments, but still not good enough. Not enough students were getting full marks for these assessments. So, a bit of homework there that still needs to be done around what are the bottlenecks in these assessments. With regard to the weekly tutorials, so with regards to the students' performances, the performances didn't differ much from the weekly tutorials compared to the class MCQs. So you can see the average percentages for the students were also relatively low. Maybe the one better response was that none of the students were getting 0s for these assessments. So because it was group work, the students had to work as a team. So the results were a bit better. But once again, the students scoring full marks for these assessments was not very, very high. So there were some students getting full marks for these assessments, but not enough. Well, just maybe for your noting that the number of students taking this module is around 84 students. So here we can see that in terms of groups, for the weekly tutorials, they were put in groups of 3 or 4, depending on numbers. And these numbers with regard to the students getting 100% relates to the groups, overall group number. Is that my time?
Yes, Lloyd.
So, just to maybe give you, have about a minute. So with regard to how do these assessments compare, so one looks at the first column with regard to the class MCQs. The overall performance you can see there was not very, very exciting. So too with the weekly MCQs. The weekly tutorials were a bit better in terms of performances. The marks were very similar amongst all the students. However, you could see that the students who were not doing well are highlighted in red in the CAM mark, and those are the ones that were a bit disturbing. So you couldn't pick up a difference between how the weekly tutorials related to the CA mark. But if one looks at class MCQs and the weekly MCQs, you could see a link between how they were scoring on the class activities and the CA mark. So that's something maybe one can look at in terms of tracking the students. On a week-by-week basis, you can see more or less the ones who are doing well. So those who are doing well on the class and weekly MCQs also tend to do well in terms of the CA mark. In terms of risk status, how we classified this was, those who were low risk, if you look at that mark, they qualify them to write the exam, and they just need to pass the exam in order to pass this module. Those at moderate risk, they qualify to write the exam, but they have to not only pass the paper, they have to make up for the deficit. So they can qualify with 40%, but if they only got the 50% in the exam, they would fail this module. So they have to not only pass the paper, but also make up for the deficit in terms of the shortfall. And those less than high-risk students, with those less than 40%, they don't qualify to write the exam. So they were assigned to, the high-risk ones were assigned to a tutor, the moderate risks were managed on their own, and those who are extremely high risk, I said come and see me, because this was really a problem. So I was going to give you some feedback on how the students responded with regard to this module. For about a minute or two, maybe? Maybe not? Sorry about that. Okay.
Thank you very much. Please give time for one question, or maybe two, that's it.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. So I collect similar data on class. I'm doing a third-year course. My name is Bill Tucker, I'm in computer science. We don't have a final exam. We only do continuous assessment. We don't use MCQs. We use questions and design exercises and programming exercises that are not based on regurgitation. So it's kind of similar to the MCQ, I guess, from the conceptual point of view. But because there's no final exam, we see exactly opposite results of what you found. We find, because the students know that there's no final exam, there's no rescue, the weekly marks go up over the course of the semester, not down. But we do get a divergence. So what I see is, see the normal bell curve from A to D, but then the number of students failing is quite high, which you marked as high risk. These are the students that really are struggling to not regurgitate. They're, in my opinion, I mean, this is anecdotal, they're accustomed to spoon feeding. They can't deal with the pressure, and they can't deal with the fact that they don't have a final exam and a special exam, a supplementary to rescue them. And those are the people that actually don't deserve to pass, in my opinion. But yeah, we see different results if there's no final exam. Yeah.
We have one more.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Very informative and very practical, especially in terms of tracking students' performance. I just got, maybe this just was an example. I just got one concern. The assessment approach, assessment activities is mainly a quantitative approach and focusing on lower level cognitive processes. Any possibilities in terms of a more qualitative approach, thinking in terms of reflective activities, more higher cognitive processes?
Yeah. We try to do this with the integrated questions. It's in terms of the assessment. The module itself, being exercise physiology, generally lends itself to quantitative assessment. So I haven't really explored, what to do around qualitative assessments for this. And it's a second year module as well, so I'm trying to sort of bridge the gap between first and third year. But it's a consideration.